The 1970s, an era when fuel was cheap, safety regulations were suggestions, and horsepower was king. From Italian masterpieces sculpted in hand-beaten aluminum to German engineering marvels that defied physics, these weren't just cars. They were rolling art, statements of rebellion, and symbols of an age when designers answered to no one but their imaginations. What if I told you the supercars of the 70s weren't just fast? They fundamentally changed what we thought possible on four wheels. De Tommaso Pantera, 1771 to 1992. What happens when you combine Italian styling with American muscle? The De Tommaso Pantera, a cultural collision that created one of the most distinctive supercars of the 1970s. First appearing in 1971, the Pantera wasn't just another pretty face from Italy. It was a revolution on wheels. The heart of this beast was pure American. A Ford Cleveland 351 cubic inch sieve 8 pumping out 330 horsepower and 380 pound-feet of torque. Unlike temperamental Italian engines that needed constant attention, this blue-collar powerhouse delivered reliable performance with a soundtrack that could wake the dead. The Pantera could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.5 seconds, blistering quick for the early 70s. What made the Pantera truly special wasn't just its performance, but its accessibility. Sold through Lincoln Mercury dealerships across America for around $10,000, about $67,000 today, it brought supercar ownership to the upper middle class. You didn't need to be a sheik or a rock star to park one in your garage. The Pantera's body was pure Italian magic. Designed by Tom Charda at Ghia, it featured aggressive wedge styling, pop-up headlights, and those signature massive rear tires that looked ready to tear up the asphalt. Inside, the cockpit wrapped around the driver like a glove, with a gated shifter that made every gear change feel like an event. But let's be honest, the Pantera wasn't without flaws. Early models suffered from overheating issues, questionable build quality, and electrical systems that seemed designed by someone with a personal vendetta against reliability. Elvis Presley famously shot his Pantera when it wouldn't start. Yes, you read that right. He pulled out a gun and put a bullet through the dashboard. Despite its quirks, the Pantera endured for an incredible 20-year production run, with over 7,000 units built. Not bad for a car company that most people couldn't even pronounce correctly. BMW M1, 1978 to 1981. The BMW M1 wasn't just a supercar. It was BMW's declaration of war against the established Italian exotics. Unveiled in 1978, the M1 was Bavaria's first mid-engine production car and the inaugural M model, a designation that would later become automotive royalty. Under its fiberglass skin lurked a 3.5-liter straight-six engine that produced 273 horsepower and 243 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers might seem modest by today's standards, but they propelled the M1 to a top speed of 162 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest production cars of its day. The development story reads like an automotive soap opera. BMW initially partnered with Lamborghini to build the M1, but the Italian company's financial troubles forced BMW to take back the project. The result was a mess of contractors. Marchesi built the frame, TIR handled the fiberglass body, and Italdesign put it all together. The finished cars were then shipped to Germany, where Bohr completed final assembly. Despite this convoluted birth, the M1 emerged as a masterpiece of engineering precision. Its handling was described as telepathic by contemporary road testers. The engine, which would later evolve into the power plant for the first M5 and M6, delivered power with a mechanical symphony that made Ferrari owners turn their heads. What truly set the M1 apart was its dual personality. It was equally at home on the racetrack or cruising down the Autobahn. BMW even created a one-make racing series called Procar, where Formula One drivers competed in identical M1s before Grand Prix races. With only 453 units ever built during its 3-year production run, the M1 remains one of the rarest BMW models ever made. Its legacy, however, is immeasurable. The foundation stone of BMW's motorsport empire and the spiritual ancestor of every M car that followed. Ferrari 512, BB 1976 to 1984. Ferrari's answer to the Lamborghini Countach wasn't just a car, it was a statement. A 180-degree pivot from everything the company had done before. The 512 BB marked Ferrari's first road-going mid-engine 12-cylinder production car, ending the front-engine era that had defined the company since its founding. The heart of this revolution was a flat 12 engine, not a true boxer despite the name, but a 180-degree V12. This 4.9-liter masterpiece produced 360 horsepower and could propel the car to 60 miles per hour in just 5.4 seconds, topping out at 188 miles per hour. Those numbers put it squarely in the supercar territory of its time. Pininfarina's design for the 512 BB was simultaneously aggressive and elegant, the automotive equivalent of a tailored Italian suit with brass knuckles in the pocket. The wedge-shaped profile, pop-up headlights, and NACA ducts weren't just stylistic flourishes. They served real aerodynamic purposes, keeping the car planted at speeds that would make most 70s vehicles become airborne. Inside, the cockpit wrapped around the driver like a second skin, tight, purposeful, and focused entirely on the driving experience. The gated shifter, characteristic of Ferraris of this era, made every gear change a tactile event. Despite its obvious performance credentials, the 512 BB never officially came to the United States. Ferrari declined to go through the expensive federalization process, though many examples were privately imported and modified to meet American regulations. With just 929 units produced over its 8-year run, the 512 BB remains one of the more exclusive Ferraris of the era. It represented a pivotal moment for the company, the point where tradition gave way to technical innovation, setting the stage for the modern Ferrari supercars we know today. Maserati Bora, 1971 to 1978. When Maserati unveiled the Bora in 1971, it wasn't just introducing a new model, it was redefining itself for the modern era. After years of producing front-engine Grand Tours, the Bora was Maserati's first mid-engine production car, a necessary evolution to keep pace in the rapidly changing supercar landscape. Underneath that gorgeous Giugiaro-designed body sat a 4.7-liter V8 engine producing between 310 and 330 horsepower. The Bora could sprint to 60 miles per hour in about 6.5 seconds and reach a top speed of 171 miles per hour. Impressive figures for the early 70s. What made the Bora truly special wasn't just its performance, but its dual nature. Unlike many of its temperamental Italian contemporaries, the Bora was designed to be a usable supercar. It featured hydraulically adjustable pedals, a telescopic steering wheel, air conditioning, electric windows, and even a surprisingly spacious trunk in the front. Luxuries that were anything but common in the supercar world of the time. The styling was pure Giugiaro magic. Clean lines, perfect proportions, and those signature brushed stainless steel roof and A-pillars that created a striking visual break from the painted body. The rear window louvers became an iconic design element, later copied by countless other manufacturers. Inside, the interior was a masterclass in Italian luxury with leather everywhere, a beautiful wood steering wheel, and clear, legible gauges, again focusing on usability rather than just style. Maserati built only 564 Boris during its 7-year production run, making it one of the rarer Italian supercars of the era. The timing of its release couldn't have been worse, just as the 1973 oil crisis hit, making fuel-hungry supercars suddenly unfashionable. Despite its commercial challenges, the Bora remains one of the most significant cars in Maserati's history, the moment when the company proved it could build a true supercar while maintaining the comfort and elegance that had always been its hallmark. Aston Martin 5.8 Vantage, 1977 to 1989. Britain's answer to the supercar question didn't scream for attention like its Italian rivals. Instead, the Aston Martin 5.8 Vantage whispered menacingly, hiding its monstrous power behind gentlemanly restraint, a velvet glove concealing an iron fist. Introduced in 1977, the V8 Vantage took the already potent Aston Martin V8 and turned everything up to 11. Its 5.3-liter V8 engine, with larger valves, high-performance camshafts, and bigger carburetors, produced around 375 horsepower and 380 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers catapulted the Vantage to 60 miles per hour in just 5.3 seconds, with a top speed of 170 miles per hour, making it Britain's first supercar and earning it the nickname Britain's first Brutal. What separated the Vantage from its European competition wasn't just its performance, but its character. While Ferrari and Lamborghini built cars that screamed their capabilities from every angle, the Vantage maintained an understated elegance. Yes, it had a deep front air dam, blanked-off grille, and muscular wheel arches. But these were subtle enhancements to the classic DBS shape, not radical departures. Inside, the Vantage cocooned its occupants in traditional British luxury, Connolly leather, Wilton wool carpets, and Burr walnut trim. The seating position was more upright than in Italian supercars, the visibility better, the feeling more commanding than engulfing. The Vantage became a cultural icon when it appeared as James Bond's car in the 1987 film The Living Daylights, perhaps the perfect pairing of character and machine, both elegant and lethal in equal measure. With just 534 examples built over its 12-year production run, the V8 Vantage remains one of the most desirable Aston Martins ever made. It represented the pinnacle of hand-built British engineering, each car requiring over 1,200 man-hours to complete, and became the template for every high-performance Aston that followed. Porsche 930 Turbo, 1975 to 1989. The Porsche 930 Turbo wasn't just a car, it was a legend with a notorious reputation. Nicknamed the Widowmaker, this beast represented Porsche's first venture into turbocharging for a production car, and boy, did they come out swinging. Launched in 1975, the 930 Turbo took the already capable 911 and transformed it into something otherworldly. The initial 3.0-liter flat-six produced 260 horsepower, later growing to a 3.3-liter with 300 horsepower. Those numbers might seem modest today, but in a car weighing just 2,800 pounds, they created explosive performance, 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 5 seconds and a top speed of 162 miles per hour. But raw numbers don't tell the whole story. What made the 930 Turbo infamous was its power delivery. Turbo technology was primitive by today's standards, resulting in tremendous lag followed by a violent surge of power. Floor the accelerator, count to 3, and suddenly all hell would break loose, usually mid-corner, sending unwary drivers spinning into the nearest ditch or tree. Visually, the 930 announced its intentions with wide flared fenders to accommodate massive tires, deep front spoilers, and that iconic whale-tail rear spoiler. This wasn't just for show. The extra rubber and downforce were desperately needed to keep all that power somewhat manageable. Inside, the cockpit remained pure 911, with a classic 5-dial instrument panel, upright windshield, and rear seats better suited for briefcases than humans. The legendary turbo-specific boost gauge became the focal point for drivers, its needle sweeping right as the car transformed from merely fast to downright frightening. What made the 930 special was that it demanded respect. Unlike modern turbocharged cars with their linear power delivery and electronic safety nets, the 930 required skill, concentration, and a healthy dose of mechanical sympathy. It was a car that separated the drivers from the posers, sometimes fatally. Production numbers were relatively high for a supercar of this era, with over 21,000 built during its 14-year run. Yet the 930 Turbo never lost its mystique or desirability. It wasn't just Porsche's first true supercar. It was the moment when the world realized that German engineering could be just as passionate, thrilling, and terrifying as anything from Italy. Lamborghini Jarama, 1970 to 1976. Not every supercar has to scream for attention. The Lamborghini Jarama proves that sometimes the quieter ones have the most interesting stories to tell. Introduced in 1970, the Jarama was Ferruccio Lamborghini's idea of the perfect grand tourer. Powerful, comfortable, and understated by Lamborghini standards. Named after an area in Spain famous for breeding fighting bulls, the Jarama was powered by the same front-mounted 4.0-liter 512 found in the Espada, producing 350 horsepower in its later S form. This translated to a 0 to 60 mile/hour time of around 6.8 seconds and a top speed of 162 miles per hour. Respectable figures for a car that weighed nearly 3,600 pounds. Styled by Marcello Gandini at Bertone, the Jarama featured distinctive lines that somehow managed to be both angular and sensuous. The pop-up headlights, knack ducts on the hood, and truncated rear end created a silhouette unlike anything else on the road. It wasn't conventionally beautiful, but it had presence, the automotive equivalent of character actor rather than a leading man. Inside, the Jarama offered a 2+2 seating arrangement, though the rear seats were best reserved for children or enemies. The dashboard was a magnificent array of gauges and toggle switches, reminiscent of an aircraft cockpit, while the large windows provided excellent visibility, a rarity among supercars of any era. The most telling detail about the Jarama? It was reportedly Ferruccio Lamborghini's personal favorite model from his company. As he said, "I preferred the Jarama to all the others, because it is the perfect compromise between the Miura and the Espada." High praise indeed from the man whose name adorned the hood. With only 328 examples built during its 6-year production run, the Jarama remains one of the rarest Lamborghinis ever made. It represents a fascinating moment in the company's history. The last new model launched while Ferruccio still owned the company, before financial troubles forced him to sell his controlling interest. Today, the Jarama exists in the shadow of its more flamboyant siblings like the Miura and Countach. But those who know, know. Sometimes the quiet ones have the most to say. Ferrari 3 Auto GTB/GTS 975 12.085. Some cars transcend their specifications to become cultural icons. The Ferrari 308 GTB GTS is perhaps the ultimate example, the car that defined what a Ferrari looked like for an entire generation. If you grew up in the 80s and someone said Ferrari, this is the image that appeared in your mind. Introduced in 1975, the 308 replaced the unloved Dino 308 GT4. Its 3.0-liter V8 initially produced a respectable 255 horsepower in European trim, though only 240 horsepower in U.S. versions due to emissions equipment. Performance was brisk rather than breathtaking. 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 6.5 seconds, and a top speed of 155 miles per hour. But raw numbers miss the point entirely. The 308's magic wasn't in its straight-line speed, but in the experience it delivered. The engine, mounted transversely behind the driver, screamed to its 7,700 RPM redline with a soundtrack that made grown men weep. The dogleg 5-speed manual gearbox with its gated shifter turned every gear change into a mechanical ballet. Pininfarina's design for the 308 was nothing short of perfection. Those sensuous curves, flying buttress C-pillars, and egg crate grille created a shape so right that Ferrari would reference it for decades to come. The GTS version, with its removable targa top, became even more famous when it starred alongside Tom Selleck in Magnum P.I., cementing its place in pop culture history. The 308's interior was pure focused Italian design. A large tachometer and speedometer directly in front of the driver, supplementary gauges angled toward the driver's line of sight, and minimal distractions. The seats, covered in rich Connolly leather, held you firmly in place, while the 3-spoke steering wheel, free of buttons or airbags, provided an unfiltered connection to the front wheels. With over 12,000 examples produced across its 10-year production run, the 308 was a commercial success story for Ferrari. Available in both fiberglass and steel bodies, with carburetors or fuel injection depending on the year, the 308 evolved throughout its lifetime while maintaining its essential character. The 308 wasn't the fastest Ferrari of its era, nor the most expensive or exclusive. What made it special was its accessibility, both in terms of price and usability. It was a Ferrari you could actually drive every day, a supercar that didn't demand constant mechanical attention or driver sacrifice. It democratized the Ferrari experience while sacrificing none of the emotion that made the brand special. Lamborghini Countach, LP 400, 1974 to 1978. If automotive designs could cause whiplash, the Lamborghini Countach LP 400 would have put half the world in neck braces. When it debuted in 1974, it didn't just move the goalposts, it obliterated them, reimagining what a supercar could be with a design so outrageous it still looks futuristic nearly 5 decades later. The brainchild of Marcello Gandini at Bertone, the early Periscopio Countach, was actually the cleanest, purest version of a design that would later become increasingly adorned with scoops, flares, and wings. The original LP 400 was all knife-edge lines, wedge profile, and scissor doors, a shape that looked like it had been beamed back from the year 2000. Powering this alien spacecraft was Lamborghini's glorious 3.9-liter V12, mounted longitudinally behind the driver and producing 375 horsepower. This translated to a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of about 5.6 seconds and a top speed of 100 to 79 miles per hour, numbers that justified the car's futuristic appearance. The driving experience was unlike anything else on the road. The cabin was tight, visibility was atrocious, and the clutch required the leg strength of an Olympic weightlifter. The gated shifter demanded precision and patience, while the unassisted steering provided feedback so raw you could feel every pebble under the tires. But none of that mattered when you buried the accelerator and the V12 erupted behind your shoulders. The sound, a mechanical symphony that built from a low growl to a banshee wail as the tachometer needle swept toward the red line, was worth every moment of discomfort. With just 150 examples of the original LP 400 built, this first iteration of the Countach remains the rarest, and to purists, the most desirable. Free from the excesses of later models, it represents Gandini's vision in its most undiluted form. The Countach wasn't just a car, it was a poster, a dream, an obsession for an entire generation. It didn't apologize for its impracticality or make concessions to everyday usability. It existed purely to shock, to excite, and to push the boundaries of automotive design. In that mission, it succeeded beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Lancia Stratos HEF, 1973 to 1978. If aliens landed and demanded to see the most purpose-built supercar of the 1970s, you'd show them the Lancia Stratos HEF. This wasn't just a car, it was a weapon, designed with a single mission: to dominate world rally championships. And dominate it did. The story begins with the Stratos Zero concept, a wedge-shaped spaceship that appeared at the 1970 Turin Motor Show. But rather than remaining a flight of fancy, Lancia actually developed it into a production car, albeit one where production meant just 492 examples built solely to homologate it for racing. At the heart of this rally monster was a Ferrari-sourced 2.4-liter V6, producing 190 horsepower in road trim. This might not sound impressive, but in a car weighing just 2,100 pounds and measuring only 146 inches long, it created explosive performance. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 5 seconds, and a top speed of 144 miles per hour. The Bertone-designed body wasn't just striking, it was functional. The wedge shape, massive windshield, and truncated rear end were all designed for aerodynamic efficiency. The entire front end hinged forward for easy access to components, while the rear clamshell did the same for the engine, perfect for quick service during rally stages. Inside, the Stratos was Spartan-like, but purposeful. The dashboard was a simple panel of gauges, the seats were thinly padded, and there was just enough room for 2 helmeted occupants and their mandatory rally equipment. This wasn't a Grand Tour pretending to be a sports car. This was a race car with license plates. On the rally stages, the Stratos was nearly unbeatable, winning the World Rally Championship 3 consecutive times from 1974 to 1976. Its short wheelbase made it incredibly agile, while that Ferrari V6 provided the soundtrack of nightmares for competitors. What makes the Stratos special is its singularity of purpose. Unlike many supercars that make compromises for comfort, practicality, or everyday usability, the Stratos made no such concessions. It existed purely to go fast on any surface, in any conditions. It's the automotive equivalent of a heat-seeking missile, locked on target and unwavering in its mission. The Stratos remains one of the most distinctive and purposeful supercars ever created, a testament to what can happen when designers and engineers focus entirely on performance without concern for convention or compromise. Alpine A310, 1971 to 1984. Not every 70s supercar came from Italy or Germany. From the mountains of Dieppe, France came the Alpine A310, a car that proved you didn't need a massive engine or an exotic badge to create something special. This was French performance at its most distinctive. Introduced in 1971 as the successor to the legendary A110, the A310 featured avant-garde styling that looked like nothing else on the road. The fiberglass body, designed by Trevor Fiore, featured 6 headlights, flying buttress C-pillars, and a fastback profile that cheated the wind with a drag coefficient of just 0.32. Impressive even by today's standards. Initially powered by a modest Renault-sourced 2.7-liter V6 producing 148 horsepower, the A310 wasn't about brute force. Later versions received a more potent 2.9-liter unit with 193 horsepower, giving it a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of around 7.5 seconds and a top speed of 137 miles per hour. Not headline-grabbing figures, but the A310 had a different kind of appeal. Mounted in the rear, the engine gave the A310 unique handling characteristics that rewarded skilled drivers. The rear-wheel drive setup, combined with a nearly perfect weight distribution and a curb weight of just 2,100 pounds, made it incredibly agile through corners. It danced where other supercars sometimes plowed. Inside, the cockpit was a masterclass in French ergonomics, which is to say, charmingly illogical. The instruments were arrayed in a pod that moved with the steering column adjustment, while the pedals were floor-hinged in the classic French manner. It was quirky, but it worked once you adjusted to its idiosyncrasies. What made the A310 truly special was its accessibility. While Italian exotics demanded constant maintenance and deep pockets, the Alpine used proven Renault components that any skilled mechanic could service. It was a supercar you could actually use every day without fear of catastrophic repair bills. With approximately 9,300 units built over its 13-year production run, the A310 was more common than many of its exotic contemporaries. Yet today, it remains relatively unknown outside of Europe, an underappreciated gem that offers a different take on the supercar formula. The A310 proves that sometimes the most interesting cars come from unexpected places. It didn't have the raw power of a Ferrari or the engineering precision of a Porsche, but it had character in spades. And in the supercar world, character counts for a lot. Ferrari 365 GT 4BB 1973-1966. The Ferrari 365 GT4. Berlinetta Boxer represents one of the most significant pivots in Ferrari's history. The moment when Enzo Ferrari finally abandoned his steadfast commitment to front-engine sports cars and embraced the mid-engine layout that had been dominating racing and competitor showrooms. Unveiled at the 1971 Turin Motor Show and put into production in 1973, the 365 GT4BB was Ferrari's response to the Lamborghini Miura, a car that had redefined supercar design and embarrassed Ferrari on its home turf. The answer from Maranello was nothing short of spectacular. At the heart of the BB was a 4.4-liter flat-12 engine producing 380 horsepower, enough to propel the car to 60 miles per hour in 5.4 seconds and onto a top speed of 188 miles per hour. Those were supercar numbers in an era when the oil crisis had many manufacturers focused on efficiency rather than performance. Pininfarina's design for the BB was a masterpiece of restrained aggression. The wedge-shaped profile, pop-up headlights, and distinctive two-tone paint created a car that was unmistakably Ferrari, yet clearly breaking new ground. The NACA ducts on the flanks weren't just styling elements. They directed air to the side-mounted radiators, keeping the powerful 12-cylinder engine cool under pressure. Inside, the cabin wrapped around the driver like a cockpit, with the major controls and gauges angled toward the driver's position. The gated shifter, a Ferrari trademark, controlled a 5-speed manual transmission that required skill and mechanical sympathy to operate smoothly. What made the 365 GT4BB special wasn't just its performance or its status as Ferrari's first mid-engine 12-cylinder road car, it was its exclusivity. With just 387 units produced over a 3-year production run, this was a rare beast even by Ferrari standards. Many never made it to the United States, as Ferrari declined to federalize the car for the American market. The 365 GT4BB would later evolve into the 512BB and eventually the 512BBI, but enthusiasts and collectors particularly prize this first iteration for its purity of design and historical significance. It marked the moment when even Ferrari, the most traditional of sports car manufacturers, acknowledged that the future belonged to the mid-engine layout. Porsche Carrera RS 2.7, 1973 to 1974. Some cars are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. The Porsche Carrera RS 2.7 falls firmly into the first category. A car conceived from day one to be exceptional, with no compromises and no apologies. This wasn't just a great Porsche. This was Porsche at its absolute best. Created in 1973 as a homologation special so Porsche could go racing in the newly formed Group 4 class, the plan was to build just 500 examples. Demand was so strong that Porsche eventually produced 1,580 units, but that doesn't diminish the RS 2.7's special status. Based on the 911S, the Rennsport, or Racing Sport, was extensively modified for performance. The engine was enlarged to 2.7 liters and fitted with mechanical fuel injection, producing 210 horsepower. Impressive for a naturally aspirated flat six in 1973. This engine, known as the Type 911/83, became legendary for its response, sound, and reliability. But the RS wasn't just about power. Porsche's engineers went to extraordinary lengths to reduce weight. The body panels were thinner gauge steel, the glass was lighter, and the famous ducktail rear spoiler was made of fiberglass. In sport trim, the lightest version, the RS weighed just 2,150 pounds. The result was magical performance for its time. 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.5 seconds, and a top speed of 150 miles per hour. But numbers tell only part of the story. What made the RS 2.7 special was how it drove, the steering feel, the chassis balance, the way it communicated with the driver through every control surface. Visually, the RS 2.7 is distinguished by its wider rear fenders, that iconic ducktail spoiler, and the optional Carrera side stripes that came in various colors. The most famous combination was Grand Prix White with green Carrera graphics, but they were available in numerous color combinations. Inside, sport versions featured minimal comforts, fixed back bucket seats, no rear seats, and less sound insulation. Touring models offered more creature comforts but still maintained the focused nature of the RS. The Carrera RS 2.7 is now considered by many to be the greatest Porsche 911 ever made, a perfect distillation of everything that makes the model special. It was the last of the original small chassis 911S before the Impact Bumper G Series arrived, and it represented a purity of purpose that even modern GT3s can't quite match. Today, original RS 2.7 seconds command prices in excess of $1 million, a testament to their significance in Porsche's history and their unparalleled driving experience. It wasn't the most powerful supercar of its era, but it might just have been the most perfect. Lamborghini Miura, 1966 to 1973. Though technically born in the late 60s, the Lamborghini Miura continued production well into the 1970s, and its influence on the decade's supercars was so profound it would be criminal to exclude it. This wasn't just a fast car, it was a paradigm shift, the blueprint that defined what a supercar could and should be. The Miura's story begins with rebellion. A group of young engineers at Lamborghini, working after hours against Ferruccio Lamborghini's wishes, created a revolutionary chassis with a transversely mounted V12 engine sitting just behind the occupants. When styled by Marcello Gandini at Bertone, the result was nothing short of automotive art. That 4.0-liter V12 produced between 350 and 385 horsepower, depending on the version, enough to make the Miura the fastest production car in the world when it launched, with a top speed of 100 to 71 miles per hour. The 0 to 60 mile per hour sprint took just 6.3 seconds, blistering performance for the era. But raw numbers don't capture what made the Miura special. It was the way it looked, those sensuous curves, the clamshell hoods front and rear, the distinctive eyelash headlights that could be raised when in use. Even at rest, the Miura appeared to be moving. No car before or since has captured the essence of speed and beauty in quite the same way. Inside, the cockpit was snug, but surprisingly comfortable, with a distinctively Italian driving position, arms outstretched, legs splayed. The dashboard featured a set of aircraft-inspired toggle switches and circular gauges, all focused on the business of driving. The Miura wasn't perfect. Early models had a tendency for the front end to lift at high speeds, and the cabin could get uncomfortably hot due to the engine's proximity. But these quirks were part of its character, reminders that this was a car built with passion rather than focus groups. With just 764 examples built over its 7-year production run, the Miura was never common, and today they command prices well into the millions. Its influence, however, is incalculable. Every mid-engine supercar that followed, from the Countach to modern McLarens, owes a debt to the Miura's groundbreaking layout and uncompromising commitment to performance and style. The Miura wasn't just a great 70s supercar. It was the supercar that showed the way forward, the one that defined what the category could be. Without it, the automotive landscape would look very different today. Aston Martin 4.8, 1972 to 1989, continued. Introduced in 1972 as the successor to the DBS V8, the V8 was a gentleman's express that could humble many purpose-built sports cars. Under its long, muscular bonnet sat a 5.3-liter V8 engine, producing around 315 horsepower and a massive 360 pound-foot of torque. This translated to a 0 to 60 mile-per-hour time of 5.7 seconds and a top speed of 170 miles per hour. Astonishing figures for a car weighing over 3,800 pounds. What made the V8 special wasn't just its performance, but its character. This was a hand-built British bruiser that combined luxury with brute force in a way no other manufacturer could match. The body, designed by William Townes, featured muscular lines that somehow managed to be both elegant and intimidating, like a heavyweight boxer in a bespoke suit. Inside, the cabin was a masterclass in traditional British luxury. The seats were covered in Connolly leather, the dashboard featured hand-finished burr walnut veneer, and the instruments were housed in a classic black panel with white lettering. The rear seats could actually accommodate adults, making this a practical grand tourer rather than just a sports car with pretensions. The V8 evolved throughout its 17-year production run. The fuel-injected Series 4 cars of the late 70s gave way to the powerful Vantage models with their closed-off grilles and estimated 375 to 400 horsepower. The convertible Volante versions brought open-air motoring to the mix, becoming favorites of the British royal family. Production numbers were minuscule by modern standards. Just 4,021 V8s of all types were built between 1972 and 1989. Each one required over 1,200 man-hours to complete, with skilled craftsmen hand-forming the aluminum body panels and trimming the interiors to the owner's exact specifications. The Aston Martin 5.8's greatest achievement might be how it kept the company alive through the darkest days of the British automotive industry. While other manufacturers were being nationalized or going bankrupt, Aston Martin continued building these magnificent machines at a steady pace, maintaining the standards and traditions that had defined the brand since its founding. The V8 wasn't the fastest supercar of the 1970s, nor was it the most exotic or technologically advanced. What earns it the top spot on our list is its indomitable spirit, the refusal to compromise in the face of changing trends, fuel crises, and economic downturns. It remained defiantly, gloriously itself throughout its long life, a rolling testament to the idea that character and craftsmanship never go out of style. In a decade often remembered for fuel shortages and automotive malaise, the Aston Martin 5.8 stood as a beacon of traditional values and uncompromising performance. A supercar in the truest sense of the word. If you enjoyed this high-octane journey through automotive history, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the cars that change the world. Until next time, Keep those engines roaring and those dreams of driving legends alive.